Hi, welcome. Today I'm going to talk about the R word. Please don't turn off when I tell you what it is, because I think there's a message here for all of you, whatever your background. Yes, I'm going to mention religion, but it's going to be in a mystical and a spiritual way. And I'm hoping it has a practical outworking for you, however you see yourself, whether even you are an atheist or an agnostic. In fact, you may even be even more open to it because of that. Being brought up in Christianity, you'd think that I would have understood it, right? I was brought up from about the age of 5 to go to Sunday school, to, got really into the faith by the time I was about 20. I was a committed Christian, evangelical Christian. But I then hit a kind of a bit of life happened, let's just say. And then in my late 30s, I kind of distanced myself from it quite a lot. And what's happened is I've had a few experiences that go across not just Christianity, but other religions too, in my last 6 months or so, that have changed the way I see myself, changed the way I see other people, changed the way I see the world. And I think it's actually changing me as a person for the better. But, people around me can be the judge of that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what happened in my story, and I'm going to give you a little bit of the background as to why I think actually we may be touching on the mystery contained in many different religions in certain respects, but particularly is seen in the mystery of the incarnation of Christ. Don't switch off, because I can hear some of you thinking he's going to give me an evangelical Christian thing. No, it's not like that. I'm going to be talking about something I think Christianity gets across, but really very often fails to get across, that I think some of the mystics have seen, and I think increasing numbers of people are beginning to see again today. And then I'm going to share with you kind of how I've brought in aspects of Buddhism into that, which I think work really well. So my story is this. About 6-7 months ago, I decided I would look back at all this stuff to do with religion again, and I would kind of deconstruct it. I would get all loads of scholarly books together, look at the historical evidence around the Gospels and Jesus, and think, is this stuff true? Let's give it a real hardcore knocking. But I thought in the process of doing that, rather than just reading books, I'd draw on all the resources I could. I would even actually open to God about it and say, look, work within this, speak to me, help me to, see what the truth is. I'm assuming, obviously, I did still believe in God, so you may not. But anyway, let me tell you what happened. I sat down for a meditation, which I do sometimes. And this particular time, I decided to do an imaginative meditation. So that is where you sit down and you kind of place yourself before God allow him to put you into some kind of scene. Some people often use biblical stories, But I did this, and I suddenly found myself in my imagination in this forest at the fork of a road at twilight. One road went off towards the sunset, and the other road went downhill into the dark, further into the forest. And as I looked down the dark path, interestingly, I saw Christ standing there, beckoning to me. Come, he said. So, okay. So I followed in my imagination down that path. Bizarre thing then happens is Christ then climbs into this hole in the ground. And I'm thinking, okay, so what's to lose? I follow on, and I climb into the hole. And as I get into the hole, I'm suddenly in this huge underground basilica. There's huge cathedrals that you might get in Italy, but it's underground and it's dark and it's dim. And then right in the back, at the distance, there's an altar. And on the altar is this golden cross, crucifix with Christ on the cross. And I zoom in, my mind's eye zooms in closer and closer to the cross on the altar. And then suddenly, as I zoom right into the heart of Christ, I think that's significant, I zoom into the heart of Christ on the cross. I'm suddenly him looking out from the cross back out onto the world, back into the basilica. I then had an interview a couple of days later. I was actually, it was a few weeks later, but a couple of days later, I read something from Heather Hamilton's book, ready for the interview that I was going to have with her. I'm going to read to you what I read a couple of days later. So she writes this. So I'm just going to. She writes this. Jesus wasn't a sacrifice to a God who needed to see innocent human blood. He sacrificed himself for humanity so that we could see where God resides, not off in the sky above, but in Jesus on the cross. Jesus is the revelation that God is in him, suffering with him, suffering through him, suffering as him. Jesus, this is the shocking bit, Jesus is a revelation that God is in us, suffering with us, through us, as us. And these are the words then that really struck me, that came after my meditation, a couple of days after. Heather writes this, but you can't know this without getting up on your cross and seeing for yourself. To see as God sees is to get up from the foot of the cross, turn around and look out from the cross. From the cross, God sees the world through human eyes. From Jesus' cross, God sees the world through Jesus' eyes. And from your cross, God sees the world from your eyes. Now, there's a lot more to that than might first meet the eye, because it's making a really radical claim. The claim it's making is that in me and in you, the divine is present right now. And I'm going to give you some reason to think why that might be true in a second. And that just as Jesus suffered on the cross and experienced human life, God is experiencing human life right where you are now. It is God, if you like, looking out through your eyes. Now that might sound pretty airy-fairy and kind of a bunch of religious junk to some people, but let's consider the state of play in philosophy and science for a moment. I won't dwell on this for too long. A really well-known problem in philosophy of mind is what's called the hard problem of consciousness, which is how to account for subjective conscious experience if all we are is matter. How is it that matter, dead inert bits of stuff, combine together in some way to create the experiencing I, the sense of the subject, here I am, looking out and perceiving the world, being who I am? Long story short, science, a lot of philosophers have talked about this, science has got nowhere fast, and philosophy of mind has got nowhere fast in being able to get even the remotest iota closer to resolving how we get such a thing as consciousness from a kind of materialist outlook on reality. And some philosophers and some scientists now as well are beginning to explore the idea that maybe consciousness doesn't arise out of matter at all, that consciousness is the primary stuff of reality. that behind all of reality is a conscious experiencing I. You can read that in two ways: I as in seeing, or I as in a subject. And the world appears within that subjectivity, much as worlds appear in our dreams. We and everything in the world may be kind of like a divine dream, or something like that. Now, that accords really well with what a lot of religious traditions have said about God or the divine. You have Meister Eckhart in the Christian tradition talking about, the eye with which I see God is the eye with which God sees me. He sees no real separation between the human and the divine. Hindu Advaita Vedanta teaching teaches the same thing, that we are essentially, if you like, nodes or aspects of Brahman, that we are looking out on the world, but really it's just Brahman. Now, I think my little meditation there is suggesting the same thing, and what Heather Hamilton was saying is suggesting the same thing. What there is fundamentally is I am consciousness. What God calls himself in the Hebrew Bible, for example, I am. So you just have this subjectivity as the ground of all being, and we are part of that. And as you experience this sense of being, if you just pause for a moment and notice in yourself that you're here, noticing, you are aware, you are being, you are having thoughts go through your awareness, you're having experiences that are going through your awareness. What always remains the same is this awareness through which things happen. And I would argue it actually happens even in deep sleep. That's another side topic. And so it's not actually, we're not in the realm of fantasy science or fantasy nonsense to suggest this idea that we might be nodes or aspects of the divine looking out into the world. Now, the message that I took from my meditation wasn't simply that I am one with God and God is living through me and experiencing the world through me, but that in me, and I would argue this can be for you too, we can be kind of agents of the divine and interface with the world, which is also within the divine. We can live the divine life. You can walk your life and live your life as if you are Christ walking the earth, as if you are the divine incarnate walking the earth. I don't necessarily want to make a parallel between myself and you and the historical Jesus Christ, obviously, but there is a real parallel there. That's the whole point of the incarnation in Christian theology, is that, as St. Irenaeus, I think, said once, that the divine became human so the human could become divine. This idea goes right back into ancient church teaching. It's a mystery that's there at the heart of Christianity. I think it's beautiful that people don't see. But I'm going to come back and just think about that metaphor of looking at things from the inside. That church that I once walked past, where I could look at the window from the outside, but it wasn't very beautiful. When I went on the inside of the church, the sunlight was shining through and it was casting rainbow colours everywhere all over the building. That actually you can't see the truth of these things. You can't just pull it apart intellectually. You have to live it. You have to go onto the inside. If you think about my meditation, what happened? It wasn't on the surface. It was down into the inner, into the interior. This is an interior experience. It's mystical. And very often religion seems, for many people, it's kind of external. They're trying to reach out for a God that's out there, or they're trying to please a God that's out there and follow the rules and what have you. But actually, the meeting place for you and the divine is right where you are. You are it. You can't actually escape it. So if you're an atheist watching this, as I promised you at the beginning, you are that. You are that too. It's inescapable. Now, let's consider a little bit kind of some of the beautiful ramifications of seeing the world in this way. You don't have to look at something like the crucifixion and Christianity through a highly dogmatic lens anymore. You don't have to worry about what's my theory of atonement, what's my, what do I have to prove about the historical Jesus and yada, yada, yada. This is actually something that I think everybody can experience, and you can come into it from different religious portals as well. That you're being invited into an experience of yourself as the divine, living in love and identifying with the divine that knows the world through you and that suffers in the world through you. That, I think, is a massive part of the picture of what Christ and the cross is about. It's a deep, deep mystery. And it's about you. It's not a mystery out there in the cloud somewhere. It's a mystery contained within you. So I'll just tell you some of the things I've done, and you can, since then, and you can think about how you might take this forward for yourself and how it might work for you based on whatever your worldview is. I've taken that meditation, and I've taken some inspiration from Buddhist teachings as well, where I've actually tried to do this, going down and in and resting in the presence of my own awareness, this I amness. This is the divine presence. And I'm trying to also practice what Buddhists will call maitri, what's loving kindness and loving kindness meditations. And what you're trying to do there, so you might use a meditative set of words like may all sentient beings be happy and know the root of happiness. And what you do is you're not just trying to say the words, you're trying to enter into that intent and wish to know that peace and happiness that is at the base of that presence, that very peaceful, unperturbed, sheer awareness of being. That's not all the contents, not all the foam on top of the sea that we get caught up in our minds, but the sheer, pure awareness itself. We're stepping back out of the contents into the awareness of awareness. I did some meditation not long ago at a retreat center founded by J. Krishnamurti, an Indian philosopher. I'm not particularly into his teaching necessarily. I just went there as a nice, beautiful place to spend a weekend. And I did do some of the practices of stilling the mind, settling the mind that Buddhists talk about. And there was a beautiful moment where just gradually and increasingly my thoughts, I was able just to let my thoughts disappear. And this took a while just to settle into. I was doing like 25 minutes every kind of 25 minutes each hour, and then doing a bit of reading, having a break, and doing it again. But gradually what I noticed was I entered into this sort of almost bliss as my mind stilled and all the thoughts were disappeared. There was underneath, there's this kind of just bliss, this what's called sometimes luminous mind, luminous presence. And that's not enough for me. I don't just want to live in a world of just sheer bliss. I don't think it's possible all the time in that way. But what I have tried to do is to do this loving kindness meditation, because I need to be able to engage with the world as well. I need to be able to be in the world and suffering with the world and being somebody of love in this world. And that's not just me trying to be sort of super saintly and altruistic or anything, trust me. There's a lot of evidence to show that when we give up a really tight control on pleasing ourselves, and this is a big insight in Christianity, it's a big insight in Buddhism, it's a big insight in the psychological literature as well, but when we give up this tight control on having to have the world go our way, which usually is about kind of grabbing hold of pleasures, keeping hold of them, and keeping at bay any pains and difficulties. When we let go increasingly, and it's a lifetime journey, but as we let go of that increasingly, we become happier. We're just more loosened up. We don't have to get things to go our way. And it struck me that this path of being more loving, this path of loving kindness and of being like Christ on the cross in my disposition towards the world, you've got nothing to lose once you decide I'm not going to pursue pleasing myself. I can exist I can be kind to myself, and it's a big part of it actually. I can be kind to myself, but I can extend that out beyond just kindness to myself to kindness to others. And I can go with the flow and be kind to them as well. And so what I've done is I've been doing that practice for the last month or two. And what I've noticed is that my feelings are changing. And I'm trying to make sure I'm not just changing my inner disposition, this kind of mantra of, kind of male sentient beings know happiness and the root of happiness, and allowing that intention to change your heart. That's what the idea of that kind of practice is. But I'm also trying to make sure I'm deliberately choosing to do things that are kind when I see the opportunity is there to help somebody. And so it's kind of a focus on the inner, but it's also bringing that into the outer world as well, into outer practice and practically into the world, because the two work together. And so I'm noticing, I think it is changing how I feel about myself. It's changing how I feel about other people. I don't feel this same remote disconnectedness that you feel when you think you're a separate individual self that's got to kind of control everything and do what you want to do to keep you happy. There's a kind of paradox there. You actually become happier when you stop trying to get happier for yourself and you just do what I've been describing. So that's the project. I've been doing that for the last month or so. Another aspect that you can try with this is something Pema Chodron is a good teacher on this. There's some lovely teaching she does on Maitri loving kindness meditations, but also on Tonglen meditations, which is a Buddhist practice where you allow yourself through the in and the out breath, on the in breath, to take in and notice the suffering that someone might be feeling. It could be someone that you know, could be someone you've seen on the news, could be someone from your past. Do what feels safe for you. I wouldn't start with anything kind of traumatic or fearful, but just start with something kind of generally okay to do. Start generally with easier things, but you allow yourself to almost like picture yourself breathing in the dark smoke of their suffering, what it feels like, the unpleasantness of it. To allow yourself to feel it, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to expand your heart to make room for the world and for people. And then you breathe out an intent, and you can visualize it. It's helpful to visualize it radiating out love into the world, into those people. May they be happy. May they know the root of happiness. And I suggest starting with people that you really find it easy to love first of all. It might be a child, it might be your dog, it might be a cat, I don't know. But start there, Pema Chodron jokes, there was a teacher of hers said, start with tortillas if that's what is easier for you. But basically you're trying to wish well. You're not necessarily magically suggesting that it works and does something to them, but it's about what it does to you. It's opening you up in that positive intent to be disposed in a loving, kind way towards others. And the Tonglen meditation brings in this element of being open to the suffering of others. So that's what I've been doing. Have a think for yourself. What could you do over the next 40 days? 40 is a great number. It's a really good kind of spiritual number. I don't know, whatever you want to do. 40. I like 40. This actually matches quite well with the amount of time researchers often say it takes to change a habit, about 4 weeks. So think of a practice you could do over the next 4 weeks that looks into you as the divine, as the ground of the divine, this pure awareness that is engaging with others and the world in front of you and coming at it not from a place of division and separateness, but from a place of unifying love. I'm one with the world. I'm one with the ultimate and consciousness. Everything is within the divine, and that includes other people. And I'm going to extend the wish for happiness, not just to myself, and it really is important to include yourself, but to others as well. Okay. I'll just add as a little caveat there, sometimes it's harder for us to extend it to ourselves. We can be our own worst enemies. So my advice there would be to maybe start with others that you find it easy to love and come back to yourself. And then gradually you can move on to people that it's harder to love. So I leave you just with that final scene back in my basilica. You as Christ on the cross, looking out into the world from a place of identifying with humanity, the divine identifying with humanity and connecting, and that going into the heart of the love of the divine for humanity. And as you go into that, remember in my meditation, I went into the heart. And as I went to the heart of Christ, then I became him looking out onto the world. So go into the heart of whatever faith you have. Go into the heart of Christianity if you're a Christian. Go into the heart of Buddhism if you're a Buddhist. Go into the heart of it. Go into the interior. Don't just mess around on the surface. It's not out there. It's working. It's in you already, and it's working within you. As Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. Please, I'd love to hear what you think and your own experiences. I'd love for you to share. Please put them in the comments below. Do subscribe because it helps us on the old algorithm, helps other people find us, and share as well on platforms that you're happy to share on, that you think other people might appreciate this stuff. And obviously give us a like if you liked any of this stuff. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.